When my parents said, "She's still your sister," I asked, "Does that excuse the fact that she ruined my future?" and smiled doing it. I still remember the exact second my world cracked apart, standing in my office, heart pounding, staring at an email thread that would unravel everything I thought I knew. My name is Brooke. I'm 30 years old. And if you'd told me 5 years ago that my own sister would betray me like this, I would have laughed in your face. But here we are. My sister, Courtney, 27, and I used to be inseparable growing up in the quiet hills of Franklin, Tennessee. We were the kind of sisters who whispered secrets late into the night, made friendship bracelets during thunderstorms, and practiced walking down the aisle for each other's imaginary weddings. She was the artist, all messy buns and paint-streaked jeans, while I was the bookworm, structured, ambitious, and always 2 steps ahead on my homework. Our parents, Alan, 57, and Deborah, 54, raised us to believe family was sacred. Dad worked himself raw running a contracting business, and Mom juggled 2 part-time jobs while keeping the home running like a clock. They weren't perfect, but they preached loyalty above all else. "You girls are all each other's God," Dad used to say. I never thought I'd learn how true, or how painful, that statement could be. I met Ryan when I was a junior at Vanderbilt. He was a grad student in literature, tall, gentle, the kind of man who remembered your coffee order and could quote Austen and Atwood in the same breath. He had this old soul that matched mine. We spent endless afternoons in dusty bookstores and indie cafes, swapping our favorite dog-eared novels. He was my first real love. After college, we moved into a tiny one-bedroom near Nashville's historic district. Life wasn't perfect between job shifts, tight budgets, and losing our childhood dog, but we were building something real. We started quietly ring shopping, dreaming about wedding venues and baby names. Meanwhile, Courtney floated between gigs. She was talented. God, was she talented, but aimless. A barista one week, an assistant at a gallery the next. She sometimes stayed with us, crashing on our couch during rough patches. I never minded. She was my sister. Ryan and Courtney got along alarmingly well from the start. They bonded over obscure vinyls and argued about the merits of surrealist art. I remember thinking, this is great. My 2 favorite people actually like each other. It never occurred to me that their connection might grow into something far more dangerous. 5 years into my relationship with Ryan, I thought we were golden. We'd survived the messy parts, unemployment, family drama, even a health scare. Then, on a rainy April morning, everything shattered. I'd forgotten an important file on my personal laptop, and since Courtney was staying with us again, I asked her to email it to me. She agreed, no problem. But when I opened my inbox that afternoon, I found something else. A thread, accidentally left open, between her and Ryan. The kind of messages that don't need interpretation. They were explicit, intimate. They mentioned times, places, things they had done while I was asleep or at work. I remember the moment I realized what I was reading. The walls tilted. I rushed home, heart pounding so hard it hurt. Ryan tried to gaslight me at first. It was just flirting. It didn't mean anything. But when I quoted lines from the emails, he cracked. He admitted it. A 6-month affair, born from lonely nights and too much shared wine. He said he was confused, that it just happened. I kicked him out that night. But nothing prepared me for the second betrayal. When I confronted Courtney, trembling, barely breathing, she didn't even deny it. Just stood there in her paint-splattered overalls, stared me down, and said, "I fell in love with him, Brooke." I didn't mean to, but I did. It's funny. You imagine betrayal being loud, dramatic. Mine was quiet. I left her apartment and vomited in a gas station parking lot. The next few months were a blur of therapy, grief, and sleeping on my friend Lila's couch. I cut them both off. Phone, social media, everything. My parents tried to stay neutral at first, urging forgiveness, asking me to think about the bigger picture. But how do you forgive someone who stole the life you were building? Eventually, I met someone new. Caleb, 34, a vet tech I met at a rescue fundraiser. He was steady, kind, the first person in years who made me feel safe. He never rushed me, just held space for the broken pieces. 2 years in, he proposed on a morning hike. Nothing fancy, just a moment that felt real. I thought the worst was behind me. Then my father dropped a bomb. He wanted me to invite Courtney to the wedding. He said, "She's still your sister, Brooke. She's family." I said. She's the reason I couldn't sleep for a year. Mom tried too, hinting that excluding Courtney would make things harder. When I stood firm, they threatened not to come at all. I thought that was the final blow. But it wasn't. What happened next, what my parents did behind my back, nearly destroyed what little was left of our family. You know that feeling when you think things can't possibly get worse? That quiet moment when you finally breathe, thinking maybe, just maybe, you've survived the storm? That's when it hits. 2 weeks after I told my parents Courtney would not be invited to the wedding, they went radio silent. No texts, no calls. I figured they were just sulking. Caleb kept reminding me, it's your day, not theirs. I clung to that. Then my cousin Jamie, bless her soul and her inability to keep secrets, called me with a heads up that made my blood run cold. So, your mom's been asking everyone if they'd come to a family-only brunch the morning of your wedding, she said hesitantly. And she's inviting Courtney. I thought you knew. I dropped my phone. Family-only brunch. On my wedding day. Without me. I called Mom immediately. She answered like nothing was wrong, chirping, "Hi, sweetie. Are you serious?" I asked, my voice trembling. "You're planning a brunch behind my back? With Courtney?" Dead silence. Then a sigh. "Brooke, we didn't want to stress you out. It's just a little thing before the ceremony. Just family, nothing big." "You mean excluding the bride and including the sister who betrayed her?" I shot back. "We're trying to keep the peace," she replied weakly. "Whose peace?" I hissed. "Because it sure as hell isn't mine." She tried to backpedal, but the damage was done. I felt like I was 15 again, watching Courtney get the bigger slice of cake, the prettier dress, the last word. It never changed. I thought maybe, just maybe, this one day could finally be about me. But no. Even my wedding was just another stage for Courtney. I hung up on Mom for the first time in my life. That night, I cried in Caleb's arms harder than I had in months. I felt like a little girl again, abandoned, betrayed, humiliated. They were going to celebrate with her on my day. I whispered, over and over like a broken record. Caleb looked me in the eye and said, "Then we make a new rule. From now on, we build our own family. One that doesn't make you beg to be respected." And that's when the idea came. If they wanted a family moment on my day, fine. I'd give them one they'd never forget. I spent the next week reaching out to every extended cousin, aunt, and great-uncle who ever said, "Brooke, you've always been the strong one." I explained what had happened. I wasn't asking for sides. I just asked for understanding. What happened next stunned me. Uncle Ray called to say, "If Courtney's there, I'm not coming." Aunt Vanessa texted, "You were always the better daughter." My grandma, quiet, soft-spoken Nana who hadn't weighed in once, sent a single message, "You are the bride. That's all that matters." And that's not all. The day before the wedding, my dad called. Voice low, quietly apologetic. "Your mother and I, we canceled the brunch," he said. "And we told Courtney not to come." I didn't know what to say. "We messed up," he added. "Bad. I just didn't want to lose both my daughters. But I see now, we already lost you once." I wanted to scream, to forgive, to cry, to hang up. Instead, I said nothing. Just listened. Then Dad told me something that made everything twist. "Courtney's not doing well, Brooke. She's been drinking. Lost another job. She told us. She might not make it much longer." The air sucked out of the room. I sat on the edge of my bed, numb. Guilt, fury, confusion. All of it crashed in waves. He whispered, "We're not asking you to change anything. Just thought you should know." After I hung up, I stared out the window for hours. And I remembered something I'd buried deep. Something from when Courtney and I were little. One summer, we were playing in the creek behind our house. I slipped on the rocks and twisted my ankle. I cried, panicked, sure I'd broken it. Courtney, without a word, crouched beside me and pulled me onto her back. She carried me the whole way home. I'd forgotten that. But even now, with everything she'd done, why couldn't I forget it? The morning of the wedding rehearsal, I got up before dawn, the sky still wrapped in that deep navy blue just before sunrise. I made coffee, stared at my dress bag hanging on the door, and felt nothing. No joy, no nerves, just static. Something was off. Caleb was already at the venue, finalizing last-minute details. The florist called to say the hydrangeas hadn't arrived, and the photographer texted to confirm the lighting schedule. Everything was in motion, but I felt frozen. Then I remembered what Dad had said on the phone. "She's not doing well, Brooke." That line wouldn't leave me alone. Against every cell in my body screaming not to, I opened Courtney's old Instagram account. It was public, always had been. The last photo was 2 months old. A blurry shot of a wine bottle, a paintbrush, and what looked like a busted canvas smeared with angry reds and black. The caption? Just a single sentence. I don't even know who I am without her. And then it hit me. There was always a shadow between us, but I'd never stopped to ask how deep hers went. Courtney never had a Caleb. Never had a friend like Lila or a support system to pick her up. She had charm, talent, all the outward sparkle, but maybe that was just armor. The betrayal still lived in me. It throbbed. But what if her destruction wasn't malice? What if it was desperation? A memory ambushed me then, something I hadn't thought about in years. I was 10. Courtney had been grounded for sneaking out, and I'd found her in the garage, crying under Dad's workbench. I sat beside her, unsure what to say. After a while, she handed me her Walkman and said, "If you ever feel like crying but can't, play track 4. It always works." That night, I played track 4 on repeat. A cheesy power ballad, but it cracked something open in me. She'd saved me that night without even realizing it. And yet here we were, 30 and 27, and I hadn't said her name aloud in over 2 years. I didn't know what I was doing until my hands moved on their own. I texted her, "Me, I heard you're not doing well." She didn't reply. 10 minutes passed. Then 20. I closed my phone. An hour later, it buzzed. "Courtney." I wasn't planning to respond. But I'm outside. I ran to the window. There she was, leaning against an old green Corolla. Her hair pulled back, wearing a hoodie and paint-streaked jeans. She looked tiny and older, like someone who hadn't slept in a year. I opened the door, but said nothing. We just stood there. Finally, she exhaled. "I wanted to ruin your wedding. I won't lie. I was going to crash it. Sit in the back. Let you see me cry. Make you wonder." I didn't move. She continued, "But I won't now. Because I saw what you posted yesterday." I frowned. I didn't post anything. She pulled out her phone, showed me Caleb's latest photo. It was me, laughing, mid-spin, in the field outside the venue. His caption, "I get to marry my favorite person tomorrow. The one who never gave up on love." Courtney looked at me, and for the first time, I saw it. Regret. Not just guilt. Not just sadness. True, bone-deep regret. "I didn't think you'd survive me," she said, voice barely above a whisper. "But you did." I almost couldn't speak. "Why him?" I finally asked. "Why Ryan?" Courtney looked down. Because he looked at me like I mattered. And I hadn't felt that in years. She started to cry then. Not the theatrical kind, but silent, trembling sobs like something old and ugly was finally breaking open. And suddenly, all I could see was that 10-year-old version of her, hiding in a garage, crying in the dark. "I'm not inviting you to the wedding," I said, steady and clear. She nodded. "I know, but I'll have coffee with you. One day. Not today. Maybe not soon. But someday." She wiped her nose, gave the smallest, broken smile, and said, "That's more than I deserve." Then she turned and walked away. I stood there long after her car disappeared down the road. Caleb called minutes later. "Everything okay?" he asked. I looked at my dress bag. My bouquet. The promises I'd make the next day. "Yeah," I said softly. "Everything's finally starting to be." The sun rose like a blessing over the vineyard. Warmth soaked through the haze, the kind that makes everything feel golden and far away. I stood in front of the full-length mirror, dress zipped, veil in place, heart pounding. This was it. Caleb was already waiting at the altar. Lila was behind me, fussing with my veil, humming off-key. My cousin Jamie was crying in the corner and pretending she wasn't. The whole room felt like a slow inhale before a first kiss. Then there was a knock at the door. I turned, expecting maybe a photographer or my dad. But it was the front desk clerk from the hotel. He held out a small white envelope. "Someone dropped this off for you. Said it was urgent." There was no name on the front. Just my first name, written in a handwriting I hadn't seen in over 3 years, slanted, uneven, oddly familiar. It was Courtney's. Lila's mouth opened, but I stopped her with a look. I stepped outside onto the balcony, hands trembling. The letter was only 1 page. "Brooke, you don't have to read this today, but if you do, I want to say something I never said properly. I didn't sleep with Ryan because I loved him. I did it because I hated myself. And you were everything I couldn't be. I thought if I destroyed the thing you loved most, maybe you'd come back down to where I lived. But all I did was lose the one person who ever carried me. The one who never gave up on me when we were kids. I thought I was showing you your weakness. But it turned out, I was showing you your strength. Today isn't about me. I won't be there. But I'll be watching from the tree line behind the vineyard. Don't freak out. I won't come close. I just want to see you be happy. Once. Congratulations. And I'm sorry. For everything. Courtney. I stood on that balcony, clutching the letter, my eyes scanning the distant vineyard rows. And then I saw it. A figure, tiny, distant, half hidden behind a grove of sycamores. She was true to her word. She didn't come close. Didn't interrupt. Didn't make a scene. She just stood there, watching. As I walked down the aisle moments later, my arm looped through Dad's. I felt strangely light. The past didn't disappear, but it stopped choking me. The ceremony was perfect. Caleb's vows made me cry before I even said, I do. Our guests cheered like we'd just crossed a finish line. And somewhere beyond the vineyards, I knew Courtney had witnessed it. The one thing she couldn't take away from me. Real love. After the ceremony, while guests were sipping champagne and dancing to Can't Help Falling in Love, I slipped away and handed the letter to Caleb. He read it in silence, then tucked it into his coat pocket and kissed my forehead. No one ruins this day, he whispered. And they didn't. But there was one final twist waiting for me. At the very end of the night, after the cake had been cut and my heels were off and my face a blur of makeup and tears, my mother came over, clutching a glass of champagne. She looked exhausted, but her expression was soft. She came to us last night, Mom said. Courtney. She told us not to push, that she didn't want to be invited, that she'd ruined enough. And for the first time, she asked for help. I stared at her. She's going to rehab, Mom added. She's going to try. I didn't say anything. But later that night, after everyone had left, Caleb and I sat on the bed of our little hotel suite, still in our wedding clothes, and I whispered, I saw her. In the trees. And Caleb said, I know. We never said more than that. We didn't have to. Caleb and I had fallen into a rhythm after the wedding. The kind of quiet, golden days where even doing laundry together felt like a privilege. Our mornings were slow. Coffee on the porch, him feeding the neighbor's cat, me journaling with my legs tucked under his. It was the life I used to dream about, back when I thought happiness was a door always locked from the outside. But on a rainy Tuesday afternoon in March, a package showed up at our doorstep. No return address. Just my name in that same familiar, slanted handwriting. Courtney. My stomach flipped. I almost left it outside, convinced that even now, she could wreck my calm with a single gesture. But curiosity, and something else, maybe hope, got the better of me. Inside the box was a small leather-bound journal, hand-stitched, the kind she used to make in art school. Beneath it lay a manila envelope. Taped to the cover of the journal was a sticky note. This isn't an apology. It's a memory. I opened the journal first. It was filled with letters. Not to me, but about me. Dated over the last 3 years. One from the week I moved out of the apartment with Ryan. She looked like a ghost. I did that. I don't know how to forgive myself. Another from the month Caleb and I got engaged. She posted a picture of the ring. I stared at it for 10 minutes. It looked like safety. And one, scrawled messily, from just before the wedding. I told myself I ruined her so she'd never leave me. But the truth is, I didn't break her. She bent, but she stood back up. I don't know how. Each page gutted me. Then I opened the envelope. Inside was a photo. 2 little girls, maybe 6 and 8, standing knee-deep in a creek. Me in pigtails, grinning wide. Courtney with a gap-toothed smile and scraped knees, holding my hand like it was the only thing tethering her to the ground. I flipped it over. Courtney had written, We started here. If I ever make it back to myself, I hope it leads me to you. That night, I sat in bed, holding the journal to my chest like it was a fragile thing, like it might disintegrate if I breathed too hard. Caleb watched me silently. Then, gently, Do you want to write her back? I shook my head. Not yet. But maybe one day. Maybe. Weeks passed. Spring crept in like a shy guest, softening the world. And then I found myself walking past the small art gallery downtown. A flyer in the window caught my eye. Local artists, healing through creation. Courtney's name was listed at the bottom. I debated going in for 10 solid minutes. Then I walked in. Her piece was tucked in the back corner, a painting of 2 intertwined trees. The same one I'd seen in her last show before everything fell apart. But now, the roots had changed. They weren't tangled anymore. They were aligned, growing parallel, still separate, but side by side. Below the frame, a small plaque read, "Sisters replanted." I left without leaving a note. Because sometimes healing doesn't need a loud reunion. Sometimes it's just knowing the other person is trying. It's been almost a year since the wedding. Caleb and I are talking about starting a family. I still get the occasional pang when I think of what Courtney took from me, but it no longer feels like an open wound. The truth is, the betrayal never fully disappears. It lingers, like a scar, visible only when you look close enough. But so does the love that came after. And that part, that's mine to keep. Forever.